Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and the Dave Portnoy meme coin market. And hopefully, we'll make some or a lot of money in the process. Loaded up for discussion today, we have Japan announcing a proposal to reclassify digital assets as financial products. That is very interesting. Legendary will break that down in a bit. Got IP-focused L1 blockchain story protocol announcing its launch on Thursday. Sammy will be taking us through what their vision is. Pretty interesting, more niche use case there for an L1 blockchain. And then finally, Barstool Sports CEO Dave Portnoy makes $550,000 pumping and dumping meme coins. Pretty outrageous stuff. We'll dive into what's going on there in just a little bit with some further reflections. Today, I've got Legendary, Rahim, and Sammy in the co-host seats. We're ready to get into it. But just a reminder, friends, nothing that we say, do, or think on this show is financial advice. This market is very, very risky. So please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, it is Tuesday. It is 11th of February. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
GM doing quite well. Took off yesterday, had a nice little day spa experience, and I saw all the craziness happen when I'm, gone for a day. We had obviously Portnoy, we had the OpenSea quote unquote test page being up with the KYC to claim, and lots more madness happening on the timeline, which made me realize it just can't fully take off today. I still need to be able to yap from the spa because otherwise it's just not working.
Did you do some yapping from the spa then?
Yeah.
Why were you seeing this stuff? Did you have our phones allowed in the spa? What kind of relaxing spa was this?
I mean, it's a silent spa. Like, you're not really supposed to speak out loudly, but yapping can be done. I can crash out on the timeline in a silent way. So that is still possible.
You're perfectly allowed to crash out. Crashing out is allowed or encouraged. Just don't disrupt anyone else while you do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
I've never been so tempted to crash out on the timeline, honestly.
Were you tempted yesterday?
Yeah. I'm still tempted.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Interesting stuff. I think people are getting. Did you see the stuff between some old prominent crypto Twitter accounts where they're literally like going after each other's family history, like we're saying things about people's spouses. It's like, guys, what's going on in the market? People not made enough money yet, or something? Like something is going very, very wrong. Sammy, you can see you nodding your head there. Like, what are you making of this angst on the timeline at the moment?
To be honest, I didn't even know that Donald was doxxed. So I didn't even know how people knew about his wife and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, they're clearly going after each other for whatever reason, whether they've got like a spat in the past or whatever it might be. But yeah, maybe people are just down that bad that they're just trying to find any reason to have an argument and just feel better about themselves. But I'm hoping it kind of resolves itself. And we were chatting before the show, we think that, I feel like there's going to be a next leg up. I feel like there's a lot of people capitulating, like they're having enough on the timeline, and that's like prime opportunity to not take your eyes off the ball. So
I like it. I mean, I liked your line of thinking, which was, so long as crypto companies have a marketing budget, as long as they're spending, then the wheels and the fun can continue. I don't mind that. We're running a crypto media company that can keep spending, and hopefully the wheels stay in motion. Rahim, how are you doing? Maybe you can tell us whether things are in motion or not. You are in Paris, I believe, ready for NFT Paris. What's the word on the ground? What are you looking forward to this week there?
GM, yes, it's good to be on the show again. It is ridiculously cold in Paris. This is not what your casual Dubai person is used to. So I hope they start moving these conferences to warmer weather. But I was like literally thinking, I don't know if I ever want to do this. And I just got here like last evening. But I'm looking forward. There's like a lot of interesting pivot that NFT Paris has had with like a lot of side events, like side main events they're doing. So they're doing RWA Paris. Then they have this thing called XYZ Paris, which I believe is focused a bit on the AI sector of it. So it's interesting to see that. And I'm kind of looking forward to how many companies am I going to get exposed to that are outside of our bubble. I don't see a lot of chatter on crypto Twitter as much regarding it, but I did hear about it from like other people. So I will definitely be reporting in a way more fruitful manner, perhaps like next week.
Perfect. Right. Yeah, that sounds good. You'll get a bit of time to get to know what's going on the ground, but then also maybe just to acclimatize. I think you need a few days to acclimatize, and then you'll be okay. I take a point about the conferences though. Like, I think there's a very reasonable arc here at the moment where people are in Paris, then there's consensus next week, and there's Denver the week after. And then there seems to be like a conference that you can go to every single week if you wanted to. So it's pretty aggressive timeline, maybe feeding into what Sam said, like the more conferences there are at the moment, I guess more people are coming to market with various things. So I think there's just so many projects backed up who need to come to market now. So there'll be all kinds of money being spent and journeys being made to meet people. So yeah, I'm kind of with Sam. I want to see this stuff continue, and I think it will.
Just on the Paris stuff, have you seen the news around that? I think there was like a kidnapping.
No, there hasn't been already, has there?
Yeah, there was a kidnapping yesterday. No, I'm not joking. There was like 3 people that kidnapped someone who was in Spain going up to NFT Paris. Yeah. So just make sure that you stay safe.
Yeah, stay safe, guys. Like, I mean, I think people have been obviously that Ledger news we reported on a couple of weeks ago, where I think it was either the former founder of Ledger or the CEO, or not the current practicing CEO. One of the former founders was taken hostage or something, and him and his wife were separated from each other, and they were trying to do some blackmail. So yeah, stay safe, specifically in Europe at the moment on all of these conferences. It's not great, not great situation. So I hope people are okay there. Okay, moving into hopefully more positive news, getting into the show. Let's start with the price action as always, starting with the majors. Let's start with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is at 97.8K. We've got ETH just up 1% at almost 2.7, and Solana is down 1% to $202. Getting into the meme coin side of things, we have Doge up 5%. We've got Pepe up 7%. Bit of a bounce across the board here. We've got Bonk up 5% as well. SPX, Murad's coin, up 16%. WIF is flat. AI16Z up 35%. I think definitely you will notice here that AI coins have bounced much harder than the others. Fartcoin might be flat, but something like ARK is up 54% in the last 24 hours, back to 30 cents. So ARK, AI16Z up big. So a little bit of a trend there. Some other ones, we've got AIXBT also up almost 10%. So yeah, not bad on that side of things. Getting into the headlines themselves, we've got Japan announcing a proposal to reclassify digital assets as financial products. The proposal includes ending all bans on Bitcoin ETFs and cutting taxes on crypto assets from 55% down to 20%. That is interesting news. Ledger will break down some further details in a bit. Doesn't sound confirmed though by any means. It's just a proposal. Next, IP-focused L1 blockchain story protocol will launch on Thursday. So we had Bearer Chain last week. We've got Story Protocol this week. I wonder if all of these protocols have like coordinated behind the scenes to make sure that they all have separate weeks. It feels like they'll have to. Like there's just too many things happening. So Sam will be breaking down some of the details there, revisiting the Story vision. I think that's interesting to do, given that it's coming out this week. And then finally, Rahim will take us through this towards the end of the show. Barstool Sports CEO David Portnoy makes $550,000 pumping and dumping meme coins. Some information there in the snapshot provided by Stats, who is with us today. Be curious to hear his thoughts when we get into that discussion. Just a very, very prominent CEO of a media company, absolutely gunning for it and just buying these coins, selling them, rotating their profits into another coin, which was his favorite coin called Jail's Stool. I think that was the one. So pretty insane behavior, to be honest. But so yeah, we'll dive into that a little bit more later. Legendary, that's the main headlines, which we'll discuss more later. What's going on the NFT side of things?
Yeah, actually a lot of green in the NFT market today, with the exception of apes. Apes are down 5%. over the last 24 hours, sitting at a 13.49 ETH floor. However, they're up 6% over the last week. And apart from that collection, actually everything is up over the last 24 hours. Pudgy Penguins are at the 10.6 ETH floor, up 5.5%. Ladies up 1%, 4.2 ETH floor. Doodles up 3.5%, 3.85 ETH floor. Azuki's up almost 5%, 3.23 ETH floor. And yet again, another day where the Kaito Genesis NFTs, which saw a massive sweep from a freshly funded wallet that still has firepower to go, up 17% over the last 24 hours, 7.8 ETH floor for them, and up 24% over the last 7 days.
Very interesting there. I saw, Sam, you tweet about some news coming out of Kaito, which is not in the snapshot. So I might come to you in a second to explain what might be happening there. Getting into the Web3 Roundup, before we do that, Binance and SEC filed joint motion to halt legal dispute for 60 days. So that's interesting. Next, strategy, as in it sounds strange to say, formerly MicroStrategy, buy $740 million more of Bitcoin. Also on the eastern side, Metaplanet Treasury hits $200 million of Bitcoin with targets of 10K Bitcoin by the end of 2025. They released a report yesterday, which people thought was quite bullish given their intentions with respect to Bitcoin. Next, Bloomberg ETF experts predict high chances of Litecoin, Solana, XRP, and Dogecoin ETFs. So it's not just Solana on the table, according to them. SVM Solar opens at $1.30 on pre-markets, which is a clean 3x on pre-sale with 100% unlock at TGE today. That came from Moritz, who is one of the best traders in the game. I missed that one. It was on my radar and I forgot to get involved. Then Athena covered in ARK's big ideas of 2025. ARK being very prominent investors in the space. Anime Chain and Bear Chain complete their social airdrops. A lot of excitement about how Kaito is going to get leveraged, right? And all of these protocols are now coming to market, and they do seem to be rewarding directly people who are yapping or tweeting about their specific protocol. So Bear Chain and Anime Chain did a little drop yesterday. Coinbase lists B3 gaming token on day one. It's pretty volatile, and but it came out pretty high as $600 million FDV. And then finally, Legendary mentioned it at the top of the show, OpenSea leaked site shows KYC requirements for airdrops. Then they've since walked that back after a ton of criticism there. So a bit of a variety of news today. That's the roundup to get up to with everything else. Before we get into the main headlines, maybe go to Sam first, because I know you were commenting on Kaito and why those NFTs might have increased in value. You had an interesting post yesterday, and then go around the table to see what else people are finding interesting at the moment.
Yeah, so Kaito made an announcement yesterday around each Genesis NFT has voting power associated to it. So you'll actually, if you go to those Connect dashboards, you'll see a lot more voting power that's come through. So I think the leader now has about 20 something million voting power, which compared to previous ones where it's been about 12 or 10 million, it seems that people are accumulating these NFTs to use to get their dashboards pushed through. So Humanity Protocol's leading with 21.7 million, as you can see on that screen. So essentially how it works is you have, I think it's 0.5% of the total voting power that's actually voted is attributed to these NFTs. So the more NFTs that vote, the less voting power that's attributed to each of those individual NFTs. So there's like an equation that you'll be able to see on the dashboard, and that is variable depending on, I think there's 3 factors. So those 3 factors. And it adds an additional layer of game theory, because historically people who have these yaps have been able to sell these yaps OTC for anywhere from like $1.5 to $3 per yap for their voting power. But now there's like another more dynamic variable where you can acquire these NFTs and effectively use them to vote as well. So there's a bit of a mix now. Now, I don't know if we've necessarily seen like a come off in the OTC market. Like I'm still seeing similar prices, maybe a slight reduction, because effectively there's still some of these dashboards that want to be pushed through in a timely manner so they can get the marketing for those. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. And I think obviously you've got the 1500 Genesis NFTs, which are trading at around about $20,000. I think when I last checked, it was about 7.5 ETH. So I think that like as the price of the NFT floor changes, like there's just an interesting dynamic as to whether protocols are prepared to buy the NFTs or pay for yaps OTC. So yeah, it'll just be interesting to see how that plays out.
Interesting. Is this like the institutional equivalent of people coming for our bags? It's like all these early Kaito users had these NFTs, and the institutions literally are coming for your bags. Like they need the votes. Instead of paying you for yaps, they could buy the NFTs
Yeah, I mean,
and acquire the votes in that way.
yeah, it's an incredibly powerful marketing tool. And I think there's a pretty decent flywheel where once you have the Yapper board for you to then create or get more yaps and potentially an airdrop associated with it, you're going to end up talking about that particular protocol. So we see it with like Story Protocol, which we'll touch on shortly. Like they've got their own Yapper board, and there'll probably be an allocation. I don't know, but I'm sure there will be an allocation for the IP token that will be distributed to people who are yapping, or the top yappers for that particular protocol. You see it with OG Labs, you see it with a bunch of other ones as well, and maybe even the Kaito. And there'll probably be some other benefits associated with the NFT, whether that's like an airdrop allocation for holding the NFT, or like other benefits, maybe subscription access, or I don't know what it might be, but tiered access. So be interesting to see how they play out. And there was it was alluded that there will be other tokens in the future that will eventually make up 50% of the overall voting power of the platform. So whether that's through a fungible token down the line, the Kaito fungible token, or other NFTs that people are speculating on as well.
I like it. The one interesting question I would have on the back of that, Legendary, is what's the benefit in doing it this way? Like if they have product market fit, why don't they just charge all these protocols, which I think they are doing as well, potentially? Why don't they just charge? Like, look, you want a dashboard? This is how much it costs. Bring in the revenue, right? What's the reason, do you think, for trying to establish this voting mechanism rather than just say, if you want a dashboard, just pay us?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty powerful answer in terms of making yaps desirable. They had this wording that yaps are a currency. And by training people even before pre-TG to actually want to vote. And this is done in such an elegant way because Kaito as a company is not paying a dime to the voters. So you've always struggled with DAOs incentivizing people to vote. And now you have a financial incentive to vote, whether that's an airdrop that you expect because you voted for someone, whether that's thinking by voting actively, you might get a higher airdrop from Kaito at some point, or straight up taking a bribe to vote. There's like direct and indirect financial incentives that Kaito does not even have to pay themselves that do two things. A, they foster that governance activity. They train people to vote regularly. And they also display that NFT, that the votes are valuable. And that's a very elegant way to do that without having to actually spend a single cent on it. And just in terms of the voting on NFTs versus paying for yaps, it's not feasible as a protocol to buy the NFTs to try to push for the win. Currently, as you know, Sammy explained it perfectly, voting power of an NFT depends on how many NFTs have voted. I can currently see that for my NFTs, just went down again. It's 94.1K votes. That means 940 yaps. Yaps going rate at $1.50. That's 1.5K to get that amount of votes in versus 20K to pay for the NFT. Of course, you can say you can sell the NFT back to the market. However, there's just 1,500 of them. So, and the floor is very thin with only 3% listed. So you can basically buy right now 20 and you push the floor price to 10 ETH, by 30 and the floor price is at 100 ETH. Obviously, more people will list going up, but you would need to realistically spend 20K for every 1.5K in bribes. And if we've seen the bribe amount that happened with some of the protocols, that would mean you'd need to throw 2 to 3 mil into the current NFT market to achieve the same power than some of the bigger bribes that happened. And that will also only work under the assumption that the floor is thick enough to provide for that liquidity coming in, which is not the case. So from a protocol that actually wants to buy their way to the win, they can't do that realistically by buying NFTs off the market. They have to bribe people if they want to pay for it.
Just going off Kalano's point in the comments, like, do you reckon there will be a trader that will try and arbitrage this? They'll accumulate a bunch of the NFTs, sell the apps OTC to brands, and then try and work out a way of monetizing that way. So Kalana uses the example of Sirius.
exactly, if you speculate that the NFTs will get an airdrop as well, and then you buy them basically for 20K a pop, and you do your best to monetize them as hard as you can. Pre-TGE, might even sell some of them into a potential pump, but basically try to get bribed as much as possible, and then get the kind of take the bribes that the NFTs receive as a like ex post discount on your purchase. That could potentially be a play, but you face the same limitations that there's just such a thin floor. You can do that with 10 NFTs maybe, but you can't, which is still a lot of money. It's still like 200K that you would need to throw at those, but you can't do it very significantly.
Final point on this before we got to move on, Rahim. I wonder whether, like, I find it fascinating, this conversation, because, well, Kaito's built a really interesting product. Clearly, a lot of people like it. They want to use it, and people are being able to make money off it, which is cool. But it's funny how there's been, it's been very little concern about like selling votes. I think we're such a financialized industry where it's just like, oh, people are willing to pay for this, no problem. Everyone kind of accepts it. Do you have any concerns in how, this thing is supposed to be designed in a democratic way, I guess, where it's like, look, you're supposed to vote for the people you believe to be winning. Do you have any concerns about the industry like going in that direction, or this protocol going in that direction, where basically everyone is completely accepting of the fact that everything's for sale, just buy the votes that you need, and if you don't have the money, then you got to wait your turn at the back of the queue, no matter how good you are? Any thoughts?
Well, I think I would actually argue the fact that it's happening in such like a transparent way, right? Like the platform talks about it, the founder talks about it. It kind of puts out everything in public, because if anything that we've seen, we kind of end up financializing everything. Even if you look at like DAO voting and how that would happen in different ecosystems, there were ways you could delegate your votes to people. And there have been times where people have come up with their own Ponzi's of how I can get like a lot of people to delegate their votes to me. So whilst like, if you look at voting mechanisms from a traditional standpoint, you kind of start seeing like, okay, maybe I'm a bit uncomfortable with this idea that you can like sell your votes. But I just think if you take like the ethos of what like the Web3 space is, like, you can sell your wallet, you can give out your seed phrase or whatever. Like, I just think like it's about time we accept the fact that there's a lot of things that you cannot gatekeep. And rather than us trying to like create like these stupid rules and regulations around it, let's transparently admit it and work out an ecosystem where everyone's aware of what the transparency behind that is.
I think it also depends on the protocol, right? Because if a protocol sets a precedent where, like, say retrospectively they reward people who genuinely voted for them, then that could then lead to a shift in incentives and how people actually behave. So I won't use a specific example, but say, for instance, there's a TGE coming up. You vote, you say you put 1 million voting power, and there's 10 million votes that go to that particular thing, and they allocate 1%. Then maybe you'll get 0.1% of the supply of that particular TGE for doing so, because you're showing that you're committed to that ecosystem, even without there being a reward, and that's incentivizing the right behavior. And I do wonder whether protocols will end up starting to do that, rather than going through this, let's pay for votes to get it through, and go through this kind of more monetized route.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that'll be interesting to observe. We'll obviously keep an eye on it, as always, as we progress through the weeks, and as more and more of these protocols like coming to market with their tokens, it'll be more and more interesting. Look, guys, we're going to get into the main headlines in just a little bit. Before we do that, let's get into our weekly entrepreneurial segment today, Publish and Profit, where we explain some of the key secrets and tips to making money online as a creator. Today, we want to share how we package up the show to create value for our partners, keep it interesting for you guys as the audience, and make it profitable for ourselves too. This segment is brought to you by Little Nouns and Expansion DAO, based on the famous Nouns DAO, who fund cool creative endeavors which can proliferate the Nounish meme. So there are a few ways we're packaging up the show at the moment, a few partnership options. First, we offer sponsored segments. We like these for giving exposure to interesting protocols, where we can do a deep dive, usually a few minutes, fully researched deep dive design, so we can cut, post-produce, and turn it into a video for the timeline too. Next, we also offer interview placements. Not all of our placements are partnered, but when they are, we will save, and we'll always try to choose people that we think will contribute to an interesting conversation. So that's the second option. Finally, we have the headline partnership option, which is reserved for someone who wants to go longer with us, would get their brand more integrated on more of our graphics and content, and be mentioned every single day. In all instances, We aim for multi-month deals, but can offer some flexibility these days because even our segment deals all last for at least a month, which at one time per week means 4 segments. So we think that's decent commitment demonstrated by both parties. And a big learning in all of my content experience has been price higher, but offer discounts for quality teams who commit for longer term. So less volume of deal flow, slightly higher prices, but less time spent getting more deals because you have long-term deals has always been more efficient in my view. Final thing we want to manifest is we've had some interest in us flying out to conferences and doing IRL content for teams. Obviously, that's not a core part of the show, but in a future deal, it could very well be Modern Market documentaries on tour at conference. And we kind of want to manifest that as the next stage of the company Legendary. We've been talking about the IRL documentary. I introduced that idea to you very recently. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I very much like it. We are typically very much bound by the confinements of the show and the structure that we want to keep to make this a very standardized product for everyone to enjoy who wants to listen in. So we can't go really off script with some of the other things that are on our minds or do other types of content. I mean, obviously all of us can do that individually and all of us are doing that individually, but in that same constellation, having something where there's like a bit more creative freedom going on, like with my little creepy pasta that I posted this morning, is something I would like very much. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. I think one of the things we will do in the near future is some IRL stuff. So stay tuned for that. I'm pretty excited about that. Shout out to Lil Nouns DAO for sponsoring this segment. As always, their expansion DAO based on the famous Nouns DAO who fund cool creative endeavors which can proliferate the nounish meme. One of our longest term partners, always appreciative. To the Lils. Let's get into the main headlines then today. A bunch of interesting stuff, quite eclectic today. We've got the Japan news, we've got the Story Protocol news, and we've also got the Barstool Sports pump and dump news. So Legendary, let's start with you. With maybe a bit of macro here, a bit of digital assets reclassification. What's going on?
Yeah, very interesting story coming out of Japan. Japan, typically one of the strictest countries when it comes to crypto regulations, also one of the most hostile countries when it comes to taxes, with a 55% tax on spot BTC. And Japan is currently, or their FSA, the Financial Services Agency, is reconsidering how they are thinking about crypto. Nothing has been decided yet. It's all still in closed door discussions to revise crypto regulations, and there are a couple ideas floating around, with the main narrative being to reclassify cryptocurrencies as digital assets, which on the one hand means that might limit the access to potential crypto services, might make it more difficult for retail investors by having those strict regulations on the one hand. On the other hand, obviously, that would make it easier to have a regulated spot ETF, a BTC ETF potentially coming through in Japan. That is one part of the discussion. Another part of the discussion is also to fix taxes on BTC, to go from the 55% down to 20%. And the 20% is not any arbitrary number. It's actually very interesting, because if you look at the Japanese equivalent of Strategy, which in Japan is Better Planet, a company that describes itself as a media company focused on educational content and analysis around BTC, but also a company who is buying a shit ton of Bitcoin themselves, holding now close to 200 mil in Bitcoin, is paying 20% taxes on those. That is the capital gains tax there. So basically, if you want to have exposure to BTC in Japan, you can either buy spot BTC yourself and pay a 55% tax, or you can buy the shares of MetaPlanet and enjoy a lesser tax rate. However, while the stock chart, let's pull it up real quick, looks very beautiful. Okay, that is just the last day. Let me adjust it in the meantime while I go on talking, because the stock is actually up a 10x over the last year. And there we go. This looks way more like a crypto chart now. Sharing it on screen right now. You already have a market capitalization of, I think, $1.5 billion for the entire company. That's against roughly 200 million BTC. So you do pay a 7x premium if you were to just buy the stock for the exposure to Bitcoin because it has rallied so much. Also very interesting to see with Metaplanet is how strong their focus is, and I'm sharing the financial results of 2024 on the screen on that BTC angle. Again, self-description being like the media company, BTC analysis, but also obviously saying that they are storing Bitcoin. And from the financial results, sharing this document on screen, it's very entertaining. The quotes that they put in there. First one is from Donald J. Trump: "Never sell your Bitcoin." Second one, Cynthia Loomis: "The United States needs a strategic Bitcoin reserve." Then there's a Satoshi quote in there, and then they also have kind of updated the self-description to say that Metaplanet is a Bitcoin treasury company leveraging capital markets to increase total Bitcoin holdings and grow BTC per share. And I like this metric of BTC per share that they have come up with. But obviously, it's the success of the company. Well, obviously, also a result of the success of the price in BTC, but certainly a product of the stricter regulation in Japan and the tax advantage that is to be had by holding BTC via your exposure to Metaplanet stocks as opposed to holding spot. And this kind of closing the loop to what I was just saying before ties back to them, the Japanese financial services agency, thinking about reducing taxes from 55 to exactly those 20% for spot BTC holdings.
Excellent summary. Really interesting to hear what's going on in the East with Metaplanet. Two questions for me. One, I've got one on the corporate side, but then just on the general perspective here, would it make sense to think that if there's an environment where it becomes much easier for everyone else to get into Bitcoin and the taxes are significantly reduced, does the need to access something like Metaplanet decrease with the ease increasing for, spot Bitcoin as capital gains goes down on those things? Does the need to access Metaplanet decrease? I guess it's the same question that people would ask of MicroStrategy, right? Like, if it's now so easy for people to access via ETFs, well, what's the point of MicroStrategy? But it doesn't seem to have affected any demand. Like, they still keep raising loads of debt to buy more Bitcoin, and there still seems to be demand for that. Any reflections there, Legendary?
Yeah, that is a very good question. And again, if we go back to their annual report, you can even see that one of the Metaplanet highlights, how they describe themselves, is that listed shares have a tax rate of 20% compared to the 55%. So even advertising with that, and of course it will impact them negatively. The other thing to look at would obviously be the operating profit, which for last year is now a positive operating profit as opposed to the year before. So the challenge for them would be to come up with some sort of additional business, whether that's being a treasury holding for other cryptocurrencies, trading the BTC actively, or doing some other things that generate an income source for them that is sustainable and that kind of manages to keep up with the expectation that obviously a 10x on the share price have created. But yes, it's going to be a massive challenge if you can just buy your BTC ETF and have the same tax rate and don't have to overpay 7x if you were just to buy the Metaplanet stock for BTC exposure.
Interesting. Okay. Sam, I maybe wanted to just come to you quickly here. Do you have, I know you're very interested on this corporate side of stuff too. Any views on this? And then the other kind of corporate question I was thinking about is, are many teams in crypto actually doing this at all? Like, we always put MicroStrategy and Metaplanet up on the pedestals, like, yep, they bought more Bitcoin. I actually hear that, like, there are loads of other teams in crypto. There's this big thing going on today or yesterday, the news that Coinbase, like, is Coinbase holding its ETH? Are they selling its ETH? The Arbitrum team came out and said, look, we're holding all of ours. I think it obviously transpired that through the long answer that Coinbase gave, or it might have been Jesse from Base, said, like, they're basically selling at least a significant portion or a reasonable proportion of its ETH. Like, should business companies or entities in crypto be executing some kind of Bitcoin strategy as well? What do you think?
Well, it ultimately depends on what the core value proposition, or whatever the aim of the business is. Because if, for instance, you've said that you're setting out to accumulate Bitcoin and that's your key business proposition, and shareholders are investing for that reason, then that makes sense. But if you've got like a custodial service, if you've got like a centralized exchange that was your core value proposition, if you're then taking directional bets on crypto as well, it then becomes a completely different business model.
Sure.
And it's like, well, people that are buying the coin, share, stock, whatever you want to call it, are they doing it because Coinbase is accumulating Bitcoin and taking that directional bet? Probably not. I know that people have said it is a proxy for Bitcoin, because they are like obviously trading, or the exchange relies on crypto being successful to then prosper. But there's custodial services, there's other things in place. There's also like the bureaucracy that you have to go through with these big listed companies that to make those changes and to actually hold that, like there'll be strategic asset allocations. So you'll have the investment arm of the business, the treasury management. Are they allowed to, does their mandate say that they can actually invest in a certain amount of crypto assets, or do they have to hold like liquid assets that they can convert and pay for operations to be a going concern? So I think there's like a number of considerations. It's definitely not that easy just to suddenly switch and be like, I'm going to accumulate a shit ton of Bitcoin because I'm bullish on crypto.
Just adding a bit to that more for those who are interested on the data side, there's actually a fantastic website, and I think Sammy has shared it a couple months ago. It's bitcointreasuries.net, that reports on public companies, private companies, governments, etc., holding a BTC treasury. Right now you have 79 public companies that hold BTC, and you can 11 governments that do that, and you guys can just scroll through that and see what ETFs, private public companies, which governments, they're at the very bottom. There we go, are holding BTC. Super interesting if someone wants to have more data on those holdings.
I love it. Yeah, that's super interesting. I appreciate those thoughts. My final thought for me, I actually didn't know that it was a media company. And I was literally thinking just the last couple of days, like, should we be executing some kind of strategy? It doesn't need to be with everything, but like, should we be doing that? Like, we're fully bullish on crypto. Should a proportion be doing that? Maybe we've been so focused on generating the revenue first, which is obviously the first thing that you need to do as a startup. And then afterwards, maybe it's like, yeah, maybe you take 5%, maybe you take 10%. And if they're a media company and doing it, why not? Why can't we? I don't know. Something to think about. Okay, want to get into the story protocols stuff, Sam, and then Rahim's going to be bringing us the more degenerate side of things with Portnoy's gambling. So, Sam, story protocol, TGE this week, pretty exciting. Another chain coming to market, focused on IP. What do we need to know? What are your thoughts?
Yep, so 2 days to go until both the TGE and the checker goes live for Story Protocol. So for those that don't know, so Story Protocol is a layer 1 blockchain focused on programmable IP. So it kind of pushes the importance of immutable data sets, particularly as AI is like proliferating the internet. You've got people using different IP to even train models. So I think there's definitely an angle there. And for those that don't know, Jason, who's the founder, is kind of originally from DeepMind, which is the Google AI. They've recently secured a partnership with Stability AI. So there's obviously some strong AI integration into that. I do think that like the valuation wise, I think that pre-markets are trading at around about 3.6 billion currently. So AFO has that pricing. They raised a Series B by A16Z. So 80 million was raised last year, I think it was, bringing their total raise to about 140 million, so 2.25 billion valuation. So that's probably why we're seeing those 3.6 billion pre-market valuations, if they've already raised funding at sort of a 50% less valuation to that. You'd expect some sort of value capture on that side when it comes to market as well. And there's been some benchmarks compared to the likes of Sui and also Solana. It's like a layer 1 blockchain, that this one is a bit more niche in terms of like specific to intellectual property rights, making sure that people do actually capture that on chain, making it more efficient, reliable to transact, because it's quite an archaic system. There's a lot of lengthy court cases. So if you can streamline that process, then it kind of makes that vision a lot more possible. And I think that we kind of see these blockchains come to market, and ultimately I think it comes down to the partnerships that they secure. So if they're able to get these big government sort of contracts to bring stuff on chain, then it could start opening up doors and driving value back to the IP token, which will go live in a couple of days.
Love it. Really, really helpful summary. Appreciate that. When you mentioned the Sui and Solana comparison, the thing that I thought is that I think one of the reasons, purely on the investment side here, obviously there's lots of interesting stuff going on the IP side. Purely on the investment side, one of the reasons I think people were quite bullish is because A16Z are backing, and you know what people are like in this space. If someone with a big name is backing, that means that people, you know, it kind of puts you to the front of the queue in terms of getting people's interest. But in addition, I think the previous L1s that A16Z had backed were, and I don't want to speak out of turn here, I want to actually find, I think they backed Sui and they also backed Solana. I'm just trying to find that confirmation. I've seen multiple sources for that. I wanted to double check. But I think that's just like another interesting component when they have backed specific L1s. I'm going to continue to look into that. Any additional thoughts then here, Legendary, on Story, and then maybe go to Rahim to think through what else might be happening on Story? You're on mute. I can't hear you.
Story specifically is a very cool idea. The one thing that I can't get out of my head is this post, though, by Thor, which looks at some of the chains that were popular last year and how the TVL of those chains has evolved. We have Harmony down 99.9% from 1.4 bill to 1.7 mil. Aurora down from 1.3 bill to 14 mil. Even Polygon's TVL down 92% from 9.9 bill to 770 mil. Polygon ZK EVM at 6 mil TVL. So super interesting idea, but I feel the complexity of what Story wants to do is it's almost like they're ahead of their time. Like that probably takes a decade more to get, or a couple of years more to get to that point where IP rights managed by a blockchain for creators, especially derivative IP usage via AI. Super interesting concept, but I feel that just too early for that, and I'm afraid they could end up being one of those stories that doesn't have a relevant chain in the next cycle, which I hope they will, because I really like the idea. But I also saw this post today, and it kind of reminded me of the reality of where many chains go after one cycle, unfortunately.
It's a fair question. Obviously, they need to find product market fit, and it's a kind of more niche, a niche thing. I'm actually quite bullish on the concept of going a bit more niche at the moment, because I think now general purpose chains are struggling to attract users and TVL, and so I think maybe just being a bit more specific in what you're trying to achieve. Maybe the goal is not as broad, in the sense that you're not trying to be Arbitrum now, or you're not trying to beat Optimism, who maybe kicked these things off as L2s. Maybe it's something a bit more specific. So let's see how that goes. Rahim, I wanted to bring you in here. You had this post earlier. You said Web3's got so big and diverse. Although you didn't mention Story, you were talking about Mega ETH minting, talking about Portnoy on the other side. Like, how do you think Story fits into this? What was your reflections here when considering the diversity on offer when it comes to maybe blockchains themselves?
But just going back to even what Legendary was saying, there's something like even Sonium, the Sony blockchain is kind of like really building on, right? Like, how do we like really protect IP rights? I agree on to a certain degree what like Legendary is saying, that of course, like they're not like a lot of people who are very bullish on the idea or who've been asking for this solution that blockchain technology could change. Having said that, if you look at the flip side of it, we're also at an inflection point with the rise of AI to save these IP rights ever before. If you look at, but even if you're looking at like mainstream media companies, right? You look at like what Amazon Prime did with the Mr. Beast games. So all of a sudden you have like this big IP ecosystem that have become like so valuable. And before these ecosystems start dissolving with the rise of AI, if we can work out models to prevent this, obviously like all of this sounds like too hocus pocus because it is too early, but like the thesis kind of makes sense. In some ways you need to protect all of this before the rise of AI comes into this place. How all of this works out, I guess we find out with time.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Let's see then. So I think the core details that you need to know is on Thursday, the claim will go live, the checker will go live, the chain will go live. So all of these things are happening together on Thursday. Looking forward to see how it goes for Story. Right. Final headline for the day. Rahim, take it away. Mr. Portnoy has been going aggressive on the meme coin stuff. Would love to bring stats into this as well in a second. I know he's been tweeting like crazy about it. Rahim, set it up for us. What do we need to know?
Awesome. So just to give like a TLDR of what Barstool Sports is, just in case like people don't know about, and Dave Portnoy is the founder behind it. It's a company that like was founded back in 2003. They've been focusing a lot on sports and pop culture. So all the way from like media content, from podcasts to videos to online blogs, which are obviously a super uprising thing back in 2003. They are a pretty successful business. They make like, based on my like research, they make about like, like they make like 100 to 400, 500 million per year in revenue. So they've been like really profitable, which is why like Dave Portnoy, like for like people who don't know like why all of a sudden like everyone's talking about him, I think it's important to take because he kind of falls into that cultural side of media, and I feel like that's where a lot of the crossover between memes and crypto culture on the culture side is going with the media. So
and just quickly, I think for our American friends who might think like, why are we explaining who Dave Portnoy is? I feel like it's someone who for whatever reason isn't as famous outside of the States as he is inside. I'm super familiar because I'm super familiar with like American sports media, but for whatever reason, he's just not really on people's radars outside. So that's why we're just breaking it down.
Yeah, it's especially because they cover a lot on America's sports side of things. So obviously Dave Portnoy is big on Super Bowl and things like that. But when it comes to a lot of the other sports like soccer and things like that, they obviously don't have the same level of coverage. So I think it's important to highlight that. So obviously he's come a lot into like a lot on fire this entire weekend, with him absolutely going nuts on the meme coin side of things. So he's been speculating around, the industry has been speculating around because he's been talking about launching his own meme coin. And then recently on this weekend, someone launched a coin as Jail Stool, saying that like Dave Portnoy is going to jail for all the pumping and dumping he is doing publicly. That's when like things started to get like a bit hazy. He started buying a lot of these small low cap meme coins. So people would be sending him, they would make like certain tokens around his name, Fartnoy, and like a couple of them that were made around his name. He would find them, anyone he would find them funny, he would end up investing more in them, talking about it publicly, and would obviously like skyrocket the price. His point of view has been around the idea that this is not very different to what the rest of you did. If anything, I'm being transparent about what I'm going to do. I'm not dumping on you behind the scenes. I'm being very honest. So he initially started off like this whole take of him being like this person who's trying to figure things out. Within 2 days, he's gone on this completely like reversal arc where he's like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm doing exactly what you guys are doing, except I'm being transparent about it. I'm telling you that I'm going to sell it instantly. So it's completely up to you how you do all of this. And of course, there's a lot of like speculation you can have around the tokens that are being sent to him. So people are making multiple. I looked up like a wallet that made like 12 or 13 tokens and sent it to him, held a bunch of supply on the idea that he's gonna like one of them, tweet it out. And so there's like a lot of like crazy speculation going behind the scenes. You also obviously on Solana had this whole technical thing, which I'm not going to get into because I'm also not as familiar, which is the address poisoning thing, where you can make it seem like he's launching certain coins. So if you look up the chain on SoulScan, it'll seem like Dave Portnoy's wallet actually bought that. So it's a very highly speculative market. His or the Jail Stool coin, which he ended up putting 6 figures in, ran up to 240 million and is sitting at 32 million right now. So it's down 85-90% ever since he announced yesterday that he's still planning to do his own meme coin. So things are bizarre, things are crazy, be careful out there. But yeah, it's gotten absolutely wild in the last 2-3 days.
Excellent summary. I think things are moving at like lightning speed at the moment. Legendary, I could see you wanting to desperately get in here and throw the verdict down. I know you've got a hot take to come, but I wanted to bring Stats in first, who I know has been tweeting a lot about Portnoy's endeavors. Sam, welcome to the stage, my man. What are you thinking here? You've been covering the Portnoy stuff a lot. Like, it's pretty intense. What are your reflections?
Yeah, I just started following it like over the past couple of days because I'm always intrigued by like what makes meme coins do well, and this it's kind. I think what happened was the first things that were happening were on last Friday he discovered that if he buys a token and tweets about it, the price immediately goes up and he can dump it and literally just make 50 grand in 5 minutes. And he did that on a couple tokens on Friday, where he would say, "Hey, I just bought this MVP," and then like literally it was called MVP, and one was after that Spanish, whatever his name is, I can't remember, Montoya. And on both of them, he made like 50 grand literally in 10 minutes. He tweeted it, his followers pumped it, and then he dumped it. And on the back of that, people started saying, "Oh, you're going to jail," because that felt sketchy to people, even though he was transparent and said he was going to dump it, or he said he might sell. Saturday, the jail stool thing happened, and he tweeted it, and then he really got into it, and he started to be like, "I want to make this thing huge," and he started dumping his money into it and putting his reputation behind it. And the problem is, once you do that, you really can't sell. Even so, I think he cares enough about his audience that he can't sell. So he ended up losing like 1,500 SOL on that. I mean, it's not over, but it went down. And then basically what happened was yesterday he kind of went on almost a quiet revenge trading arc, where he found that he didn't even have to tweet things. Simply by buying things, there were so many people who were chasing his wallet and tracking his wallet that so people would send him 50% of the supply of something. He would buy 10 SOL more of it. All the copy traders would chase him, and then he would literally dump everything 10 minutes later. And he did 2 of these where he made 900 SOL in 10 minutes each. So he really kind of, and he did it pretty quietly. But I don't know, it made me want to look into other, like the Franks of the world, or other people who I know really get copy traded, because it's just basically an infinite money glitch. Like, people just keep coming after. And I think, the Portnoy was the one he went really public with, and he did well on that. But then shortly after that, there was another one called Fartstool. He never even mentioned it, but he made almost 1,000 SOL on that in 10 minutes. So I don't know. I think he kind of got addicted to this idea that literally by just buying something, he could make 100 grand without doing any work, putting any risk on, and he just did it over and over again.
Yeah, I think definitely kind of got infatuated with it more and more as the weekend went on. I want to go to Legendary. I know you probably go on, Sam.
I'm sorry, just the fact that he did it silently, though, to me was like, oh, this guy's actually really hooked on just printing money out of nowhere and taking it. Like, and he claimed earlier in the day that any gains from these other tokens were going to go into Jail Stool, which is kind of the one he's kind of put his identity behind. But then he actually didn't buy any more Jail Stool, so it did end up feel like he kind of just felt like he had infinite money that's activated and wanted to print.
Yeah. That's interesting that you went down the rabbit hole of like the copy trading thing. That's definitely worth some further investigation, I think. Legendary, I know you wanted to come in here, and then Oxy, you got your hand raised. Don't know if that's a question for Stats, but we'll circle around there as well. Sam, if you've got any thoughts, just chime in. Legendary first.
Yeah, I'm once again impressed by the collective amnesia that CryptoX seems to suffer from. He shilled SafeMoon in 2021. The videos are still there. People have been reposting that, where he had his own NFT, where he had his soul embedded into his NFT. He shilled NCAA NFTs. So he was like pretty active last cycle trying to make money of different things, whether shilling SafeMoon or selling NFTs. And now he comes back and pretends to never have heard about, shit coins, and that all of that is new to him. And people are like, oh, he's learning so fast. He does everything the right way. And we pretend like all of that has never existed. This is just mind-blowing to me. And yeah, I don't even know what is worse, like whether it's him doing what he does, or whether it's people being completely blind to that and ignoring all of that and pretending that he's here for the right reasons and has the potential to onboard millions, and it's going to be different this time. Main reason why I want to crash out on the timeline, to be honest, but I'm going to hold back a bit more.
Even with Jade's Stool, didn't he like tweet something out that I saw? sorry for my French, but I sold my tokens while taking a piss and then ended up buying later. And he was like, I did it by
Oops.
mistake.
That's what
Yeah.
happens sometimes when you go to the toilet. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he ended up doing like this whole thing on Spaces where like FaZe Banks joined in, and he was like, I'm doing this transparently, and like, why are you guys not respecting it? And FaZe Bank was also like, he also took like on like this entirely different arc where he's like, you might as well just do whatever the hell you want. You do right by the people are upset with you. You do wrong by the people are upset by you. So he also went with the idea, you want to create your own coin, let me know, go for it. Like, we are all in support of it and stuff. So I feel like the timeline has like literally kind of gone completely anarchic.
Yeah.
The Safe Moon thing was different though. That was literally just like a paid advertisement, like where he that was the position that he had for over a year before it went to zero, and then he got in trouble. But I I do think he was genuine. This is genuinely the first time he's like realized that simply by tweeting a ticker he can make $100 grand. I think it's new. I think it's novel, and I think he is genuine. And the other thing is I don't think he told any. He has told a couple, like the lie that he was going to funnel any profits into jail stool. Maybe that was a little bit of a lie, but I think the argument is not like, oh, this guy's great. I think the argument is if someone says they're going to sell and people are so stupid to buy, whose fault is that? That's more the argument. I don't think anyone's out there really celebrating this stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's actually, we spoke about this a couple of days ago when we were talking about the new guidance or legislation or regulation, where we literally read from, I can't remember who it was that made the announcement, but the guidance on meme coins, for example, is that they do not need further regulation. Like people should know that they are buying risky stuff. And I think they do know that they're buying risky stuff. I don't think they're oblivious to that at this point, which then opens the door, which I guess opens the door for more of this stuff, right? Because if the official position is going to be, everyone knows that this is hyper risky stuff, you do all know what you're doing, take responsibility for your actions, then I guess that presents an opportunity to proliferate this kind of stuff. Sam, any reflections here? What do you final takes? Got about a minute or two, and then Oxy. Sammy, sorry. When we have two Sams, sometimes I get it wrong.
I thought you were bringing stats back in. It's an interesting point around that regulation for meme coins, because there was that reference recently that they're collectibles, and that's a whole different game. So it's like, what are these things?
I actually saw Portnoy talk about it as a collectible as well, and we talked about it, although we were making fun of it a little bit. But when Sachs was asked, when the crypto and AI czar was asked by media, is it okay for the president to have a meme coin? One of the answers, and I'm not saying we agree with this, right? Because it's kind of humorous, but his answer was, it's like a collectible, like almost like as if when people used to collect coins back in the day. Now you just go collect a meme coin. So it's funny you mentioned that, because I think I actually saw Portnoy use that language at one point. So yeah, I think it's a reasonable question. Closing us out now, we've only got a minute or so left. We run a bit over. Oxy, your hand's been raised though. Make a final take and then let's close it out.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate kind of what Legendary said. Like, he's been here before. He's been in this space. He's got a partnership, or had a partnership with Kraken for a long time, and they listed it day one. They listed Jailstool like day one because of the partnership. Like, he knows what he's doing. On a space yesterday, he was actually like talking to that the legalities point. He said, once I realized the president of the United States can launch their token, I was like, oh, I'm going to get involved. Like, he said that verbatim on space. Is crazy. That's the path they're going down. But yeah, I mean, he's been here before. He knows what he's doing. And then yesterday on a space, he actually reiterated he wants to explore, quote unquote, tokenizing his company. So, I mean, who knows what's going to actually happen down the line? But it's funny that this is Trump's the cornerstone to everyone thinking they can get into this space like this. Yeah,
I think Trump's normalized it. Then the regulation is itself going to normalize it by saying, go ahead, guys, take responsibility for your own stuff. So that's going to normalize it. But I think ultimately what will happen is it will be like the law of diminishing returns, right? Like, people are going to get burned too much over and over again, and then every pump will get less and less. And I think maybe Stats' data was already confirming that the latest buys people were not jumping in on, because literally he's dumping it straight after and they dump. So pretty diminishing returns, I think we're seeing already. But look, guys, that is our show. Interesting discussion as always. Just a reminder, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour live on X video, YouTube, Apple, and Spotify podcasts. We'll be back with you again tomorrow. Thank you to Legendary, Sammy, and Rahim co-hosting with me. Thank you to Stats and Oxy jumping up, contributing as always. And thank you for joining us. We'll be back with you again tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Take care, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.